The studio lights were warm and bright. The cameras rolled, laughter echoed as Stephen Colbert welcomed Meghan Markle onto the set of The Late Show. She smiled, poised and graceful, dressed in a simple black outfit. The audience clapped, cheering. Her name, it felt like another late-night interview, safe, polite, easy. Stephen began with light questions. "How's life after royalty?" he asked with a grin. Meghan chuckled. "Quiet," she replied. "Peaceful, mostly." They joked about weather, books, and morning routines. She shared a few stories about her children. The audience loved it. Her calm presence filled the room. But then the air began to shift. Stephen leaned forward. "Let's talk about something a little more serious," he said. Meghan's smile faded slightly. He continued, "There's been rumors about diplomatic involvement. Things you might have seen during your time inside the palace walls. Things the public never heard about." The crowd quieted. Meghan stayed composed. "Stevens?" Voice sharpened. "A memo was leaked last year. It mentioned a royal asset who stopped a classified operation in East Africa. People say that person was you." Meghan looked at him. Her expression didn't change, but the silence stretched. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I thought we were here to talk about community work and women's rights." Colbert tried to lighten the moment with a joke. "Well, they say truth is part of community too, right?" A few in the audience laughed nervously, but Meghan didn't. She sat still, her eyes fixed on him. Stephen pushed again. "Did you know about Raven? Protocol." The room went cold. Meghan blinked slowly. "I'm not here to talk about classified missions or rumors," she said, "especially not ones tied to pain and silence." Stephen looked uncomfortable. The producers behind the camera shifted. Meghan glanced toward the audience, then down. At her lap there was one last question on Colbert's card. He hesitated, then asked it anyway. "Were you ever asked to keep quiet about things that could harm powerful people?" The words echoed. Meghan looked at him. The seconds passed. No sound, no movement. Then, without a word, she stood up. The chair creaked behind her. The audience sat frozen. Even Colbert didn't speak. She looked at him for a long moment. No anger, no fear, just something deeper. A quiet decision. She turned, walked away. Off the stage, past the cameras, through the curtains. Gone. The audience gasped. The silence in the studio was louder. Then applause. Stephen sat there, stunned, blinking, unsure if the show was still happening. The producer shouted, "Cut!" But nobody moved. Within minutes, the internet was on fire. #MeghanWalksOut started trending. Clips of her standing up, silent and still, were played in slow motion. The media exploded with theories. Why did she walk out? What was Raven Protocol? What did she mean by pain and silence? Some thought she had broken under pressure. Others believed she had planned the whole thing. But a few voices, quiet, careful voices, said something different. She said more in silence than any words could say. One journalist tweeted, "Behind the headlines, something else began." Calls were made. Government officials began checking old files. Intelligence agents were alerted. A memo labeled "restricted" started circulating through private emails. In newsroom boardrooms and government offices, people were not laughing. They were watching. Stephen Colbert didn't return to the show the next night. He released a short message. "We are reviewing the events of last night. It's got to stand by open dialogue, but also recognize the weight of the moment." The Late Show's YouTube channel removed the interview clip. But nothing could stop the wave. A small group of independent reporters began digging. One found an old diplomatic cable from Nairobi. Another found a name, James Whitaker. A third found records of a halted military operation years ago, buried under redacted documents and blank pages. And all of them kept asking the same thing. Why did Meghan walk out? She hadn't shouted. She hadn't accused anyone. She hadn't answered the last question. But that silence was louder than any confession. As night fell on the world's media, one truth began to rise. She didn't walk away from the stage. She walked into history. The walk-off didn't end. On stage, that night, the clip was everywhere. Every major network played it. News anchors debated it. Experts guessed what it meant. People replayed the moment again and again how Meghan stood up, paused, and walked away without a word. It was not normal, not dramatic, not loud, but something in that silence felt heavy. It's dangerous. It's like something had cracked open. On CNN, the anchor said it wasn't just an awkward exit. It was a message, a warning maybe. On BBC, a former royal advisor said that was not spontaneous. She knew what she was doing. On Twitter, thousands of users argued. Some called her brave. Others said she was hiding something. A few people remembered the question Stephen had asked. Did you know about Raven Protocol? That phrase stuck. People started searching it, but nothing came up. No Wikipedia page. No government file. Only rumors on conspiracy forums and 2-year-olds. Reddit threads that were mostly deleted by morning. Things got more serious. The White House press secretary was asked about the interview. She answered carefully. We don't comment on speculative content or individual interviews, but reporters noticed her pause, her discomfort in London. The Prime Minister's team gave a colder response. Her Grace is no longer an official member of the royal family. We have no comment on private interviews or entertainment programs. Still, 2 high-ranking officials were seen leaving a closed-door intelligence briefing that afternoon. No one knew what was discussed, but the meeting lasted almost 3 hours back in New York. Stephen Colbert didn't show up for the taping of his next episode. A statement from CBS said, Mr. Colbert is taking a short break following a deeply sensitive moment on air. Behind the scenes, the real pressure had started. His producer, Marla Gaines, received a message that morning on a secure Signal app. No name, no greeting. Just a sentence. You were warned not to mention Raven Protocol. She stared at her phone for a long time, then deleted the message. But the fear stayed. Later that day, she received an email from an untraceable account. Attached was a short audio file. It was scratchy, poor quality, but there were voices. Military voices. One of them said, Proceed to Phase 2, confirm. Duchess status, eyes on Nairobi asset. The words made her stomach twist. She called Stephen. We need to talk, she said. Meanwhile, someone else had started asking questions. Lena Rivera, a 29-year-old investigative reporter with CNN's international desk, sat in a cafe in Brussels watching the Meghan clip for the 5th time. She wasn't interested in drama. She didn't care about celebrities, but when she heard the words Raven Protocol, something clicked. She had seen that phrase before. 2 years ago, she had been following a story about a U.S. drone strike gone wrong in Africa. The official report was short. A mistake. No survivors. Case closed. But one source, a Kenyan military contact, had whispered something different. There was a British team nearby, and someone stopped the final order. Someone highly female, protected. He didn't say more. She couldn't prove anything. The story never aired until now. Lena opened her old files, found the notes. The timelines matched. The location, Kenya. The date 6 weeks before Meghan and Harry announced their royal exit. It was a long shot, but she sent a message to the old source anyway. It read, Do you remember the Duchess? Back in Los Angeles, Meghan stayed quiet. She didn't post. She didn't reply to interviews. But she was not hiding. That morning, a private jet landed in Geneva. Meghan stepped off with a single assistant and 2 bodyguards. No press, no announcement. She entered a tall glass building near the UN headquarters. Inside, she met with André Lemoine, a human rights lawyer with access to classified UN reports on war crimes and covert operations. The meeting lasted 2 hours. No one knew what was discussed. No one knew what documents were exchanged. But when she left, Andre told a reporter waiting outside, "She is not running from the truth. She's carrying it." That quote went viral. The silence was no longer just a moment on television. It was growing into something else, something much bigger. By the evening, whispers turned into warnings. An editor at The Guardian received an anonymous tip. "Watch Raven Protocol. You're next." A senior producer at CNN received a package inside. Was a single printed page with blacked out lines. Only one sentence remained. "If she speaks, everything falls." It wasn't about celebrity anymore. It wasn't about television. Something darker was waking up. Something powerful, and Meghan's walk-off was no longer just a reaction. It was the first move. Lena Rivera sat alone in her small hotel room in Brussels. The windows were closed, the lights dimmed, and her laptop screen glowed in the dark. She had been up all night, going through old files, cross-checking timelines, and sending quiet messages. 2 sources she hadn't spoken to in years. Finally, at 3:17 a.m., her phone buzzed. It was from the Kenyan military contact she had spoken to 2 years ago. The one who first whispered about a female royal who stopped something big? His message was short. The Duchess knew. "Look for LT, James Whittaker." She paused. That name wasn't familiar. She opened a secure database used by international journalists. It took a few minutes, but then a profile appeared. .lt, James Whittaker. British Special Forces. Last active in 2019. Missing in action, Operation Classified. Last location, Northern Kenya. The file ended there. No photo, no follow-up. Just a blank space where life used to be. Lena's heart beat faster. She checked the timeline again. Whittaker's disappearance happened just weeks before Meghan and Prince Harry announced their break from the royal family. The media had blamed the British press, pressure, and public life. But maybe, just maybe, there was more behind that. Decision Chi picked up her phone and dialed her editor in New York. "You're calling at 4 in the morning," said groggily. "Just listen," she said. "I think Meghan was connected to an illegal joint operation between UK and US forces. I think she tried to stop it. I think someone tried to bury it." There was silence, then a sigh. "If you're wrong, you lose your job." "I'm right," she said. "We're sitting on the biggest international story since Snowden." He hung up without another word. Halfway across the world in Geneva, Meghan stood near a tall window in a private office. The lawyer, Andre Lemoine, watched her closely. "They will come after you now," he said quietly. "I know," she replied. "You still want to speak?" She nodded. "The world deserves the truth." Andre slid a thin folder across the table. Inside were records copies of signed orders, redacted intelligence memos, and one photo. It showed a dusty Kenyan road, a wrecked military vehicle, and a man in combat gear with blood on his hands. On the back of the photo, Whittaker. 12.06. 19, they said. It was a simple patrol, Andre whispered. But it was more than that. Meghan closed the folder. "They used civilians as bait to force rebels into the open," she said. "And when I found out, I tried to speak to the Foreign Office. They told me to stay quiet for national security, for the royal family's image. They said my voice would destabilize diplomacy," Andre asked. "Why now?" Meghan looked up. Her voice was steady. "Because silence helps no one but the guilty." Back in New York, Colbert sat in a private meeting with CBS executives. His face was pale. In front of him were printouts of internet articles, screenshots of Meghan's walk-off, and a report from the internal investigation. The producer, Marla Gaines, handed him a flash drive. "This is the audio file I got from an unknown source. Stephen." Plugged it into a laptop. The room went quiet as they listened. British and American voices. Military codes, the word Raven Protocol. And at the end, a clear sentence. "The Duchess interfered. We neutralize or we expose." Colbert stared. At the screen. "You were used," Marla said. They wanted to trigger her. They knew she would walk. Stephen leaned back, hands over his face. God, I thought it was just a ratings play, a tough interview. You were the weapon, Marla said. She was the target. That night, Lena Rivera landed in Nairobi. She met her source in a quiet cafe near the city center. He was older now, slower, but sharp. He handed her a sealed envelope, inside copies of medical reports, satellite images, and a field report signed by Lt. James Whitaker days before he vanished. The report detailed a plan. Lure rebel fighters using fake aid trucks. Take them out before they reached a village. It was approved by both MI6 and the CIA. The plan changed last minute when one officer named refused to follow the command. The report ends with a warning: royal involvement suspected. Local interference reported. Operation compromised. Lena looked up. Who was the local interference? The source smiled. She wore no uniform, but she carried more power than all of them combined. And in that moment, Lena understood this wasn't just about one operation or one interview. This was about who controls the truth and who's willing to break everything to protect it. Storm was building, but not outside. 'Twas in newsrooms, government offices, and embassy halls around the world by the next morning. The Guardian published a headline that shook the internet: Raven Protocol. The operation that never happened. Until now. The article was written by Lena Rivera. She didn't use full names. Not yet. But she connected the dots. A covert military strike to allied governments, civilian deaths, and a mysterious royal observer who stopped the mission at the last moment. She mentioned Lt. James Whitaker. She mentioned an unnamed duchess. The world started guessing. Comments exploded. Is this about Meghan? Did the royals know about this? Colbert was used as a trap. Within hours, the British government issued a short, cold statement. The Ministry of Defense does not comment on classified operations or unofficial reports from foreign media. But that wasn't enough anymore, because now it wasn't just about Meghan. Back in Geneva, Meghan sat quietly in a private conference room. She was preparing her statement. Royal guards, no fancy stage. Just her, a small camera, and the truth. Andre Lemoyne read the first draft of her message. It's strong, he said. But are you sure you want to go on record? I have to, Meghan replied. They already turned me into the story. Now I will give them the truth. He nodded slowly. We'll burn bridges. She looked straight at him. Some bridges are meant to burn. They pressed record. She spoke calmly, clearly. She told the world about one moment when she learned about Raven Protocol. How she found documents hidden in diplomatic channels. How she questioned it and was told, this is above you. She paused. I wasn't a soldier. Wasn't. A politician. I was told to smile, wave, and remain silent. But I saw what silence protects, and I chose something else. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. But her voice had the weight of history. The statement was released through Andre's international legal group. It hit every major platform within minutes. CNN aired it live. BBC called it a turning point in royal and political history. Al Jazeera replayed it on loop, alongside satellite images from northern Kenya. But the biggest shock came just an hour later. A whistleblower from MI6 sent Lena Rivera a set of encrypted files, dozens of pages of internal messages, audio logs, and images. And in the middle of it, one black and white scanned document with the words, approved. Raven Protocol signatory Lt. James Whitaker witnessed. Royal Diplomatic Envoy, Duchess M. Markle. There it was, proof. That night, protests broke out in London, Washington, and Nairobi. Outside Buckingham Palace. People held signs, truth over titles, Meghan, KNEW, and they buried IT. Where's Whitaker? Journalists camped outside the palace gates. The royal family released a carefully worded statement. while the Duchess of Sussex no longer represents the crown in official capacity. We are deeply troubled by the growing speculation and are reviewing the matter through appropriate channels. The world didn't want silence anymore. They wanted answers. At CBS headquarters, Stephen Colbert sat with Marla Gaines in his office. The lights were off. He hadn't slept. "We have to say something," Marla whispered. Stephen nodded slowly. "I helped them corner her. That interview, it was a setup." He stood up. "I want to tell the truth. On air. No jokes. No scripts. Just truth." Marla stared at him. "You'll lose everything." He looked tired, but calm. "Maybe that's the cost of finding it." That night, The Late Show aired a rare, somber broadcast. Stephen looked directly into the camera. "I've done thousands of interviews, but last week something broke. Not just in the show, but in me. I asked a question I was told to ask. I thought I was chasing truth, but I was being used to deliver a message." He paused. "And Megan didn't answer with words. She answered with silence. And now I understand why." The broadcast ended with no music, just black screen. Across the ocean, in a quiet flat in Nairobi, Lena Rivera received one final email from her source. Subject: Whitaker message. He's alive. Attached was a grainy photo. A man with a beard walking through a village in northern Kenya, face bruised. Eyes cautious. Lena stared at it for a long time. Then she opened a blank document. Title: The Duchess, the Soldier. And the silence. They tried to kill because now the world knew the story. And soon they'd dive. Know everything else. The world was no longer guessing. They had seen the documents. They had heard Meghan's voice. They had watched Colbert admit the truth. But now they wanted justice. Governments began to move slowly, carefully, like giant machines waking from sleep. In London, the opposition party demanded an emergency hearing in Parliament. One MP stood up and shouted, "Did our military work with foreign intelligence to carry out unauthorized operations? And did we silence a member of the royal family to protect that secret?" The Prime Minister refused to answer directly, but behind closed doors, a crisis team was formed. In Washington, D.C., U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee released a brief statement. "We are aware of the media reports and will review the matter internally." But not everyone was waiting for reviews. The International Criminal Court in The Hague launched an official inquiry into Raven Protocol. They requested interviews, satellite footage, and military communication logs. And they asked to speak with one witness above all, Meghan Markle. In Geneva. Meghan sat at a long table with two legal advisors. She looked tired but calm. A UN investigator across from her placed a thick folder on the table. "We believe at least 9 civilians died during the operation," he said quietly. 2 were children. Meghan closed her eyes for a moment. "I know," she whispered. "I tried to stop it, but I was already too late." The investigator nodded. "Not here to blame yourself. You're here to help us prove it happened." She opened her folder. Inside were handwritten notes, emails, and a memory stick. It held the only copy of a video James Whitaker had sent her. It showed a dusty village, gunfire, smoke, screaming. And at the end, Whitaker's voice. "They told me it was a mission to stop war, but I only saw death." At the same time, Lena Rivera boarded a small plane in Nairobi. She was flying north, toward a remote area near the Somali border. Her source said Whitaker was alive, hiding under a fake name, afraid of being hunted by his own government. She carried only a backpack, a small camera, and a hidden GPS tracker in case something went wrong. After 2 hours of rough flight, she landed near a dirt road. A car was waiting. An old man in a scarf nodded and said, "We go now." They drove for over an hour. Then they reached a village of clay houses and dry fields. And there, standing beside a water well, was James Whitaker. He looked different, thinner, worn, but the eyes were sharp, alert. He recognized Lena instantly. "I knew someone would come. Eventually," he said. "I just didn't think it would be you." She stepped forward slowly. "I need your story. The world needs your truth." He didn't answer for a long time. Then he said, "All right. But I want one thing." "What?" "I want to face them. In court." News of Whitaker's survival spread like wildfire. Breaking: missing British officer found alive in Kenya. Set to testify on Raven Protocol. The British military issued a tight-lipped statement. "We are aware of the individual's location. No further comment." But Lena had already arranged his travel too. The Hague under UN protection. It was official now. There would be a trial. 1 week later. The courtroom was filled. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but reporters stood outside the gates, narrating every move. Megan arrived first. Dressed in gray, no makeup, no entourage. She walked with steady steps. Then came James Whitaker by 2 guards, gave a small nod to Megan. She returned it. The trial began. The first day, Megan spoke. She told the court how she discovered a file marked Raven Protocol inside an embassy envelope, how she read about the mission, how she asked questions, and how, after speaking up, she was told, "If you open this door, you won't be able to close it." Then James testified. He explained how the mission was supposed to be a clean strike. In and out, they said, but they were lied to. The target wasn't a terrorist camp. It was a village suspected of housing one rebel fighter. "We were told to fire anyway," he said. "But I refused. I took the footage, I ran, and I hid, because I knew they'd come after me." Back in New York, Stephen Colbert watched the trial alone in his apartment. The screen showed a still photo of Megan sitting in court, her hands folded, expression calm. Stephen whispered, "She really did it." Producer Marla called. "The network wants you to return next week. Ratings are up. They say the public forgives you." Stephen answered slowly, "I don't want forgiveness." "What do you want then?" "I want to use the stage for something real." Outside the courtroom, reporters delivered the biggest update yet. And judges accept testimony. Raven Protocol confirmed as unauthorized joint operation. Investigation into U.S. and U.K. intelligence agencies begins. Governments scrambled. Public pressure mounted. Whistleblowers came forward. The silence had finally broken, but something even bigger was about to surface, because buried inside one of the documents Whitaker smuggled out was a name no one expected. A name from inside the palace. Asterisk inside the courtroom in The Hague. The silence was electric. The judges had just confirmed that Raven Protocol was real land illegal. Megan's words, Whitaker's video, and the leaked military logs had forced the truth into the open. But one final document had not yet been read aloud. A sealed envelope marked Palace Coordination Eyes Only. Whitaker had found it in a USB drive hidden inside his field gear. The lead judge opened it slowly. Inside, just 2 printed pages. Everyone in the courtroom leaned forward. At the top of the second page was a name. Sir Henry Lancaster. He had served as the Royal Security Liaison, a quiet role most people never heard about. But insiders knew he was the bridge between the British royal family and the government's intelligence wing. And according to the memo, Sir Henry authorized the Duchess's presence near the Raven Protocol operation. Gasps echoed across the room. The memo revealed that Meghan had been invited on paper as a humanitarian observer. But behind the scenes, her presence was arranged so the palace could have deniability if the mission failed. She was never meant to know the full truth, but she saw it anyway. The last line of the memo was chilling. If necessary, discredit the Duchess. A soft media containment strategy is advised. In London, the royal family called for an emergency press meeting. An official stood at the podium, reading from a prepared statement. "We are shocked and saddened to learn of Sir Henry Lancaster's involvement. He has been removed from all royal duties pending investigation." We continued to support transparency and justice. But the public wasn't buying it anymore. Across the UK, protests grew larger. Crowds outside Buckingham Palace carried signs. Meghan told the truth. Justice, not silence. Where's the Queen? At the same time, us media began asking harder questions. Congress members demanded a hearing on America's role in Raven Protocol. One senator even asked how many other operations were buried under silence. In Geneva, Meghan sat by the window in a quiet hotel. The city below buzzed with reporters, diplomats, and protesters. Andre entered the room holding a phone. "The BBC wants an exclusive interview," he said. "Live. No pre-screened questions." Meghan looked out the window. "They'll try." "To spin it," she said softly. "Make it about politics, about revenge. Then control the story," Andre replied. "Not for yourself, for the victims." She nodded. That night, millions tuned in to watch Meghan speak live. She sat alone. No teleprompter, no notes. "I did not come forward to attack anyone," she said. "I came forward because people died. We were told to act like it didn't happen." She paused. "I am not perfect. I have made mistakes. But silence in the face of injustice is not loyalty. It's fear." Her voice was calm, controlled. "I loved the royal family. I served them with everything I had. But love without truth is not protection. It is prison." The interviewer leaned in. "Do you think the Crown owes you an apology?" Meghan didn't answer right away. Then she said, "They don't owe me anything. They owe it to the world to stop hiding behind ceremony when people are dying." The next morning, Sir Henry Lancaster was found unconscious in his London home. A note was discovered nearby. It read, "They asked me to do what they didn't want to be seen doing. Now the curtain is falling. Sorry." He was rushed to the hospital. Alive but in critical condition in Nairobi. Lena Rivera received a call from an unknown number. A voice said, "There's one more file." Sir Henry kept it in a private vault. "It's not about Raven. It's about what comes next." The call ended. No name, no trace. She flew to London the same day, through back channels. She learned the location, a hidden archive below the Royal Military Museum, guarded, monitored. But Lena had help now. A retired colonel, one of Whitaker's old commanders, gave her access using an old passcode. "Whatever you find down there," he said, "don't keep it to yourself." She descended into the cold archive. The room smelled like dust and secrecy. She opened the drawer marked Special Assets Post-Raven. Inside, she found something that chilled her more than anything before. A blueprint for Operation Horizon. Unlike Raven, Horizon wasn't just one strike. It was a system, a digital surveillance program targeting journalists, activists, and influential threats to national harmony. And Meghan's name appeared in the list of risk profiles. So did Lena's dot. So did James Whitaker's dot. Wasn't over, it was only beginning. Lena Rivera stood in the dim archive room, staring at the documents in her shaking hands. Operation Horizon wasn't just a secret plan. It was a weapon, digital, silent, invisible. A tool to monitor, target, and erase people who spoke too loudly inside. The file were names. Meghan Markle, LT, James Whitaker. Lena Rivera, and dozens more. Journalists, diplomats, human rights workers. Even a UN peace advisor, each marked with one of three codes. S, silence; M, manipulate; N, neutralize. Meghan's file had been upgraded from M to S, just 3 weeks before the Colbert interview. Lena's had been changed to M. 2 days ago, she swallowed hard. It was clear now. Raven Protocol had been a test. Horizon was the real system, and she had just found it. That same evening, Meghan sat in her hotel room, flipping through news channels. Every station was now covering the story. Raven Protocol. The ICC trial. The royal memo. Her own words, but something felt off. There were patterns, some clips missing, some headlines strangely softened. On one network, her entire interview had been cut into sound bites that made her look angry, emotional, unbalanced. Andre walked in with his phone in hand. "We've got a problem," he said. Several media outlets just got flagged by an international cybersecurity watchdog. They were hit by a virus. All had been preparing stories on Horizon. Megan looked at him. "They're already trying to erase it." He nodded grimly. "And we're next." Lena didn't wait. She left the archive with copies of everything and flew straight to Geneva. By morning, she and Megan met in a secure UN briefing room. James Whittaker was there too, wearing a simple shirt and a new identity badge. "This is bigger than any of us thought," Lena said, laying the files out on the table. "Raven was a field test. Horizon is a long-term global operation." Megan leaned over the list of names. Her eyes stopped at a young Kenyan journalist marked with an N. "She's dead," Whittaker said quietly. "They said it was an accident, a car crash." No one spoke for a long time. Then Megan looked up. "We need to go public now, before they wipe us out." And so they did. The three of them appeared together, leave on an emergency international broadcast hosted by a neutral news outlet from Iceland. The anchor introduced them with a firm voice. "What you are about to see may change how you view global power forever." They presented the Raven Protocol story from start to finish, then unveiled Operation Horizon. They showed the files, the names, the codes, the timelines, and the plans for data control, psychological operations, and targeted media disinformation. "Campaigns, none of us are safe," Lena said. "Not when truth is treated as a threat. Power," Megan added, "should never be afraid of questions." The broadcast was viewed by 92 million people in the first 12 hours. The world was no longer watching. The world was rising in Washington, D.C. Emergency meetings were called at the NSA and the Pentagon. Congressional leaders demanded answers. In London, mass protests shut down roads outside Parliament. Shut Down Horizon became the largest protest movement since the Iraq War. International courts fast-tracked hearings. Investigators swarmed government tech agencies, and in secret corners of those same governments, people began deleting files, shredding, burning, running. But it was too late. Stephen Colbert, returning to his show, stood in front of a silent audience. He said only one thing: "She walked off my stage. But now she's rewriting the script for all of us." The next day, Lena received an anonymous email, no name, no subject line, just a message. "Nice try, you exposed Horizon. Ha! But have you heard of Gatekeeper? Attach was a file encrypted, locked, unknown contents." Her heart sank. A chill ran through her. Whittaker, standing beside her, read the screen and said, "This isn't over. It's only deeper." Megan sat down slowly. "Then we keep digging, because some stories don't end with silence. They begin with it."